Welcome to my channel. In today's episode, I would like to tell you about events from 2005 that took place in the Canadian city of Markham, a case that sparked one of the largest missing persons searches in Ontario history. Please listen to the story of Alicia Ross. Alicia Ross lived there with her mother and stepfather. She was born on February 8, 1980, and was adopted by Sharon Fortis and Marvin Ross shortly after birth. The couple later separated, each starting their own family, and the girl stayed with her mother and her new husband. Alicia was a very cheerful child. A little blonde girl with blue eyes and a smile always on her face. She was a child who caused no trouble. When she was 3 years old, another child, a boy named Jamie, appeared in the home. Over time, Jamie became her best friend. They both loved spending time in nature, going camping or kayaking. When they were children, a friend of their mother showed them kayaking, and it became their passion. They went on kayak trips every year. As they grew older and could travel on their own, Alicia and Jamie, accompanied by friends, traveled to distant parts of Ontario to discover new places to kayak. Alicia even became a camp counselor, showing children the beauty of the sport. She didn't limit herself to exploring nature in Canada. She participated in a trip down the Amazon and explored the beauties of Australia, Israel, Japan, Jamaica, and Peru. She planned to visit Costa Rica soon because she really wanted to see the tropical forests. Everything in her life was going very well. She traveled the world, had a satisfying job, and a new boyfriend she had been seeing for a few weeks. On August 16, 2005, 25-year-old Alicia went with her mother to a nearby park to walk the dogs. She was truly happy and couldn't wait for the next day, as she was expecting a promotion at work. After the walk, the women returned home and Alicia went to her room, which was in the basement. It had a separate entrance from the back of the house, almost like a separate apartment. Sharon, her mother, went to meet a friend, and Alicia prepared for a date with her boyfriend, Sean. When her mother returned home, she was very tired and decided to go to bed early around 11 p.m. Before going to bed, she saw her daughter, who came to borrow a purse. Alicia returned to her room, where she and Sean played billiards, and Sharon finally went to sleep. Around midnight, Sean left Alicia's apartment and returned to his home. When he arrived, he wanted to call Alicia to let her know he got home safely, but she didn't answer. He wasn't worried at first, thinking she had probably fallen asleep. However, when he couldn't reach her the next morning, he started to worry. By 10 a.m., he called Hewlett-Packard, where Alicia worked, but she hadn't shown up. Unable to contact her, Sean went to her house to check on her. Her car was parked in the driveway, but no one answered the door. He continued to call her, but without success. Fearing something bad had happened, he decided to report her disappearance to the police. He also called her parents, who were spending time with friends on a golf course, not suspecting anything bad had happened to Alicia. After speaking with Sean, they hurried home, where the police were already waiting. Sharon immediately went to her daughter's room, but she wasn't there. The room looked as if she was getting ready for bed. The clothes she wore the previous day were folded. Her ring was on the sink, indicating she had taken a shower. Her purse, phone, cigarettes, house, and car keys were all in the room. This could be cause for concern, since if she had left the house on her own, she would have taken these things. It looked like Alicia left the house without taking anything, not even shoes, which were found in the garden, along with a wine glass and a cigarette butt. Sharon noticed the gate leading to the garden was open. Everything indicated that Alicia had not left the house voluntarily. Something bad must have happened. The search for the missing 25-year-old began. Since Sean was the last person to see Alicia and the one who reported her missing, he was immediately questioned. However, he couldn't provide much information. He last saw his girlfriend around midnight the previous day when she walked him to his car. She stood on the other side of the street, waving goodbye to him. That was the last time he had any contact with her. Everything was fine when he left, Sean assured the police officers when they asked if he had been fighting with his girlfriend in the garden. The police also interviewed Alicia's closest neighbors. Going door to door, they tried to gather any information about whether anyone had seen her that evening, at night, or in the early morning. No one saw Alicia after she parted ways with her boyfriend. Even the neighbors living closest to the house didn't hear anything suspicious that night. In the search operation, the police had access to a helicopter and tracking dogs. Near the house where the girl lived, there was a ravine and a wooded area. On August 18th, The day after Alicia's disappearance, the ravine was searched with the help of a helicopter and specially trained dogs. However, they did not find Alicia or anything that could lead to her. Mainly thanks to television and other media, information about her disappearance quickly spread around the area. When the police asked for volunteers to help search for Alicia, the response was enormous. On the first day, 60 people volunteered to help. The next day, there were already 400. People took time off work to participate in the search, undeterred by the bad weather, with heavy rain falling during the search. In addition to the volunteers, about 60 police officers participated in the operation, and they decided that the number of volunteers needed to be reduced to 100 per day because they couldn't manage such a large group of people wanting to help. It was the largest search operation in the region. The search lasted several days but was fruitless. There were no traces of Alicia. Alicia's family assumed she had been kidnapped, so they decided to make a television appeal to her and anyone who might have any information about their daughter. Sharon, in a trembling voice, assured that all they wanted was their daughter's safe return home and that they didn't care about punishing anyone. On August 22nd, 5 days after Alicia's disappearance, the police announced they would look at the case more from the perspective of a possible crime resulting in death rather than a simple disappearance. The search continued, but not on as large a scale as at the beginning. The police asked the volunteers to stay home as they no longer needed such a large number of helpers. Due to the change in the case's status, Sean Hine, Alicia's boyfriend, came under increased scrutiny from investigators. He was the last person to see Alicia, and it might seem strange that he reported her disappearance to the police so quickly without contacting her family first. The area where the boyfriend lived was searched and neighbors were interviewed, asking if they had seen him doing anything suspicious, like taking out the trash, on that night. His house was also searched, but despite this, investigators maintained that he was not a suspect, only a witness who could provide valuable information. However, Sean felt he was being treated as the main suspect and gradually became less cooperative with the investigators. When asked to take a polygraph test, he refused. The investigation into Alicia's disappearance continued, and her family did everything they could to find her. After several psychics contacted them, they even decided to use their services. Of course, each of them claimed to know where the 25-year-old might be. Following the tips given by the psychics, families searched in various indicated places, each time becoming more disappointed. They did not find her in a hotel, on a boat, or near the Humber River. All these clues turned out to be false. Despite these failures, Sharon did not give up. She gave interviews to every television and radio station. She wanted as many people as possible to hear her daughter's story and could not allow Alicia to be forgotten. Each new interview was very painful for her, but she knew she had to do it for Alicia. After each interview, the police received many calls with information about the missing woman, but none of them turned out to be true. Media interest in Alicia Ross's disappearance waned over time. A month had passed since she was last seen, and the media found new topics to cover. However, the investigators continued to work on the case, checking every piece of information. On September 21, 2005, there was a breakthrough. Daniel Sylvester, who was 31 years old at the time, accompanied by his lawyer, went to the police station in Newmarket to confess that he had killed Alicia Ross and that she had died at his hands. The man was the closest neighbor to Alicia and her family. He lived with his mother in the house right next to the Rosses, but they had no close contact. Sharon later admitted that she had only seen him a few times over the past few years. Daniel Sylvester had been unemployed since 1993. He spent all his days in his basement room watching TV and playing games. He suffered from depression, which he had been treating for years, but at some point he stopped taking his prescribed medication. After confessing to the crime, Daniel Sylvester told the police where they could find Alicia's remains. There were 2 locations about 25 miles apart. Initially, the man left Alicia's body about 30 miles from his home, in the forest near Manila. Then, 3 weeks later, he decided to move it to another location, 25 miles further north, near Coboconk. Investigators went to the places indicated by Sylvester and found the remains at both locations. Due to the condition they were in, they could not be immediately identified. Only later examinations confirmed that it was Alicia Ross. The autopsy also revealed that more than 30 bones in her body were broken, showing how brutal the beating must have been. The funeral was held on October 7th, attended by about 1,500 people. According to Jewish tradition, the funeral should take place within 24 hours of death, but in this case, the family could not follow the tradition. In the coffin next to the body, her brother Jamie placed a paddle, something that brought her so much joy in life. Her family kept asking themselves why. Why was their Alicia murdered by a man she practically didn't know? According to Daniel's testimony, the confrontation happened around 1:30 a.m. They met on the path that separated their homes. At that time, Alicia wanted to know what he was doing there. Alicia swore at the man. When he stated that he had as much right to be on that path as she did, she called him a loser. This insulted him to the point that he lost control of himself, lunged at Alicia, and hit her in the face. He felt humiliated and knew he had to react. He knocked her to the ground, pinned her chest with his knee, and then started banging her head on the sidewalk. After a moment, he noticed that she was not breathing. When Alicia was already dead, he took her body to the garage, lined the trunk with cardboard to avoid getting it dirty, and placed Alicia's body inside. He then cleaned up the blood, took a shower, changed clothes, and drove towards Manila to dispose of the body. As he later testified, he returned to the place where he hid the body about 10 times during the first 2 weeks. He had a reason for this. When he took Alicia's body away, he also disposed of his clothes, which were stained with Alicia's blood. After a while, he realized that he had left his wallet in the shorts, which contained his documents, driver's license, health card, and bank cards. He couldn't find them at the location, despite returning several times. 3 weeks after killing Alicia, Daniel Sylvester decided to move her to a more secluded place, where there was a better chance that no one would find her. He was surprised that no one had seen the whole incident that night, and perhaps Alicia's body would not have been found for a long time if Sylvester had not gotten scared. During the investigation, the police discovered that the man had driven somewhere at 5 a.m. on the day Alicia disappeared. Since he claimed he did this every day, the investigators wanted to give him a polygraph test to exclude his involvement in the woman's disappearance. According to Canadian law, this test is voluntary, and no one can be forced to take it. However, Daniel Sylvester believed that the police probably already had some evidence that he had killed his neighbor, and at the urging of the family lawyer, he decided to confess. As it turned out later, at that stage of the investigation, the investigators did not consider him a suspect at all. The police were convinced that the person responsible for Alicia's disappearance was Sean Hine, her boyfriend, and subjecting Daniel Sylvester to a polygraph test was just a formality they had to perform. The trial in this case began on May 7, 2007, over a year and a half after Alicia's death. He admitted to killing Alicia but insisted it was the result of an accident. The trial was to prove whether it was indeed an accident or if he acted with the intention of killing Alicia Ross. During the trial, the judge and jurors heard that Daniel Sylvester had been fantasizing about a forced intimate act for some time, which was a result of his building anger. He had hated women since his school days because they teased him and called him a failure. Daniel Sylvester had been under psychiatric care since the age of 9, but he stopped treatment in 2001. From that moment on, he spent most of his time in his room, not interacting with anyone except his mother. He had no girlfriend, no friends, no job, and no interests other than watching TV and driving his mother's car late at night. Despite Daniel Sylvester admitting to his fantasies, he denied in court that he had done it to Alice. He did not do so either before or after her death. The body was undressed from the waist down because during the struggle it tore, and Sylvester did not want anyone to think the victim had been abused. After hearing the man's testimony, the jurors had to decide whether he was guilty of the young woman's death. He was asked to pen a letter to Ross and her family. "I don't know what I'd say," he told the detective as he started sobbing uncontrollably. "I would say I had no right to take your daughter's life," he cried, turning away from the detective and facing a wall. Through his tears, he wrote a 2-sentence note to Ross's family. "I am beyond words. I cannot possibly express how sorry I am for what I have done." McViety left the interview room, but the tape was still rolling. Sylvester could barely be heard talking to himself. "I should never have been born." Earlier in the tape, Sylvester said he regretted the grief he had caused his mother. "I told her that. I'd never do this to hurt you. I'd never put you in this position. All the shame and humiliation you're going to have to bear being associated with me. You know that she doesn't need that. She's 71. In his confession to police, Sylvester stated that he had also confessed to a Catholic priest at a nearby church. On the recording, a police officer asked Sylvester if a forensic analysis would find traces of semen on the garbage bag of bloody clothes he dumped in a wooded area. The bag contained some of Ross's clothes, as well as Sylvester's. Sylvester said semen would likely be found. He told the officer that after he killed Ross and disposed of her body, he felt so nervous and upset that he calmed himself down. He wiped himself on a piece of clothing, which he threw into the bag of clothes. "I remember the panic was starting to set in again," Sylvester said on the tape. "I didn't have any means of alleviating the panic. We are unlikely to learn the truth anymore." The trial was based on the question of whether Sylvester had intended to kill Ross, which would lead to a second-degree murder conviction, or whether there was no premeditation nor intention to kill Ross, which would lead to a manslaughter conviction. In the end, after 3 hours and 45 minutes of deliberation, the jury was beyond a reasonable doubt in their decision that Sylvester either intended to kill his next-door neighbor Ross between their Markham houses on August 17, 2005, or that he had used force he knew could kill her and acted reckless in allowing the death to happen. This meant he automatically received a life sentence, with the question being when he could apply for parole. On July 5th, the judge announced the sentence. According to it, only after 16 years in prison could he apply for early release. Alicia Ross's family was very satisfied with the verdict, most likely because this nightmare had finally ended, and 2 years after her death, they would no longer have to appear in court, where their wounds were continually reopened. After Alicia's death, her family started a fundraiser in her memory. The proceeds from this fundraiser support the Canoe Foundation, which organizes various kayaking trips for young people aged 13 to 17 who may not have the opportunity due to economic or social reasons. Alicia loved kayaking, and now, thanks to the money from this fundraiser, others can come to love it too. That's the end of this story. Thank you for listening to it to the end. Goodbye.